You know, a few days ago, we watched Fate's Strange Fake, and in that last episode, we get to see demigods fighting each other. One of them is Hippolyta, the queen of the Amazons, who fights someone from Greek legend and has some rather personal issues. And that suddenly reminded me of someone else from the same region, someone who also has very specific problems. Her sister, who you probably know much better from Fate Grand Order, Penthesilea. Penthesilea is the queen of the Amazons, who rose to power after her sister Hippolyta was killed by Heracles. And this woman has a very strange, maybe I should say unique, anger trigger. Penthesilea absolutely does not want to be called beautiful, at all. If anyone calls her beautiful, she completely loses it. She hates it so much that she even bends the summoning system itself. Penthesilea prefers, and will actively be summoned as a younger version of herself instead of her prime, just to avoid being seen as beautiful. That's how extreme this is. She is so angry at the idea of being praised for her looks that she'll twist reality itself just to escape that label. And that's what I want to talk about today. Some of you might already know that I made a similar video a few weeks ago, but with different characters. I talked about how some Fate characters have anger triggers that feel really weird to us, things we can't really relate to. Like how Medusa hates being called tall and sexy, or how Musashi can literally cut you down if you take her food when she's hungry. If you want more juicy details about who they are and the weird things that make them snap, check out that video. Let's just call it part 1. I'll put the link in the corner. You don't have to watch it first though. It's not mandatory, but it's there if you're curious. So, let's get back to Penthesilea. Yes, this woman's berserk button is being called beautiful, and at this point you're probably wondering, how does that even happen? Why does a single word make her snap like that? To understand it, we need to go back to her legend. You see, Penthesilea once fought Achilles in the Trojan War and gave it everything she had. In that battle, she lost. But losing wasn't the problem here. It was war, and she was a warrior. She could handle defeat. What truly messed her up was what came after. You see, instead of respecting her strength, Achilles commented on her beauty. In some versions, he even fell in love with her. To Penthesilea, that erased everything she stood for. In her eyes, Achilles didn't see her as a warrior at all, just her looks, and that makes her angry. That's why she'll lose it over anyone who even says his name, or anything that sounds like it. And yeah, that also includes being called beautiful, pretty, or basically any kind of compliment about her looks. Now after hearing that, you might be wondering how bad it actually is, right? Well, we get to see just how bad it is in her interlude. Holmes, Da Vinci, Moriarty, Hector, Fujimaru, and MASH literally hold a secret meeting in a dark place, carefully talking around both Achilles and Penthesilea without using their real names. Why? Because if even one person slips up and says Achilles, Penthesilea will immediately appear and attack anyone she thinks might be him, or even remotely resemble him. And Hector had to pay the price, because he was the one who accidentally said Achilles' name. She attacked him purely because she associated him with Achilles. It's stupidly funny, honestly, especially since Hector was literally her ally in the Trojan War. And the same thing goes for the word beautiful. If anyone says it, she instantly goes berserk. Yeah, she's a berserker, so raging is kind of her thing. But the trigger is weirdly specific and honestly kind of funny from the outside. You see this a lot in events, where other characters rush to calm her down before things explode. Like in Setsubun, when Matahari literally covers her ears to block out words like beautiful, or in the summer event, where she freaks out until she realizes people weren't talking about her. And then there's Hector, who basically acts as her full-time emotional damage control, even though it doesn't always work. Now, after talking about Penthesilea, who has a really weird rage trigger over praise and beauty-related words, we're moving on to someone who gets triggered just by the existence of people with the same face as her. And honestly, who else but Heroine X, And I think this one is the weirdest so far because it's not something we can really relate to. Like, we can't even imagine what that feels like because, we don't have identical copies of ourselves running around with the same face and hair, all born from one illustrator's imagination. Yeah, Mr. Takuchi, I'm looking at you. But once you actually know her background, you can at least understand it a little. Anyway, quick rundown on why she hates the Saberface so much. Heroine X is one of those characters with surprisingly deep and massive world building, but not the kind you can trace back to real history. And honestly, it's hard to take her completely seriously because, come on, she's from a place literally called the Servant Universe. It's goofy by default. But jokes aside, in that Servant Universe, she comes from a bad future where the world is completely overrun by Saber X-Spies. Sabers rule everything, Lancers are straight up extinct, Archers are treated like criminals, and the whole system is totally unbalanced. So to prevent that future, she travels back in time as the self-proclaimed ultimate anti-Saber decisive weapon. And yeah, that's basically her entire motivation. She hates sabers, or more specifically, the Artoria species. Put her anywhere near a saber, or in John's case, someone who even kind of looks like a saberface, and she instantly turns into a screaming, uncontrollable ball of pure rage. Not only that, she actively tries to prevent characters from becoming sabers in the future. And this isn't just talk. This actually happens. During the second summer event, she straight up tries to assassinate Maeve with a cheese gun, saying she can't allow Maeve even the chance to become a saber someday. Maeve counters the attack, and Heroine X then says she has a bad feeling Maeve might end up as a swimsuit saber in the future. Which is hilarious because, yeah, that turns out to be a very specific and very accurate prediction. We eventually do get Saber Maeve in her summer form. She's tried to assassinate people preemptively just because she sensed they might become sabers later. And during that summer event, her hatred gets so out of control that she'll even deliberately attack bystanders if they look like Artoria, or just remind her of Artoria in any way. She'll straight up try to ram into them on purpose. And if you summon Heroine X and actually max her bond, you get her Bondcraft essence, which turns out to be a literal assassination target list. Now here's the irony. Despite all of this, she never actually succeeds in killing a saber. You see, when she finally faces Saber Lily, basically the perfect target, she completely fails to go through with it. I mean, Lily is just too kind and innocent, and that moment quietly cracks Heroine X's worldview. Over time, especially through bond levels and later events, she slowly shifts from kill all sabers to protecting Fuji instead. The hatred never fully disappears, but it's toned down. Or maybe it's just being set aside. Next up is Jason. Now if you know this guy, you already know he's ridiculously easy to piss off. But honestly, that's just Jason being Jason. He's kinda weak, doesn't look very intimidating, and his overall style honestly feels like a budget Gilgamesh knockoff. Please don't kill me for that, but yeah, that's how he looks on the surface. But that's just the outside. Despite all of that, Jason actually has a lot of charisma, and a much better heart than people give him credit for. One thing that really stands out about Jason, aside from his appearance, is that he openly hates discrimination against non-humans. He had zero problem accepting Asterios, even going as far as saying Asterios deserved to become one of Greece's greatest heroes, and that mindset applies to Heracles too. And that's where his anger trigger comes in. Throughout the story, it's clear that Jason doesn't like being insulted, but most of the time, his comebacks aren't that vicious. He'll talk back, sure, but it's usually pretty mild. However, if someone insults Heracles, Jason goes straight for the verbal jugular. This might be a bit of a spoiler, but in Fate's Strange Fake, it's revealed that when they were younger, Jason made a vow to Heracles. He promised to create a kingdom without prejudice, one where everyone would be treated equally, including him. Between Jason's natural aura as the leader of a band of heroes and his hatred of discrimination, it's clear why these two were so close. Jason doesn't even bother comparing Heracles to other heroes. In his eyes, Heracles comes first, always. Everyone else is second. So yeah, if someone insults Heracles, Jason completely loses it. Canis finds this out the hard way in the Atlantis Lost Belt. She mocked Heracles right in front of Jason, saying he died just to protect him. After that, Jason completely snapped. He started firing back, calling Canis a bitch who loves being a god's errand runner, even though he knows she hates the gods. Then he went even further, straight up calling her a masochist for it. He openly humiliated her in front of everyone and outright challenged her to a fight. That was insane. Now, if you look at the original Argonaut myths, there are a lot of different versions. Some say Heracles didn't sail with them for long. Others say he didn't want to be led by Jason at all, and so on. But in almost every version, it's implied that even if they weren't always best friends, they were still great heroes who worked together, at least for a time. In the Fate series, they're basically best friends, or something close to that. Now, this anger trigger is also Jason's biggest weakness. Losing Heracles completely breaks him. In both Okeanos and the Atlantis Lost Belt, Heracles' death shatters Jason's confidence and drains his will to fight. He falls into despair, even showing passive, death-seeking behavior. It's only when others force him to snap out of it that Jason pulls himself together, not for glory, not for ambition, but to make sure Heracles' sacrifice wasn't meaningless, just like how Fujimaru once did for him. Okay, now that I think about it, getting angry for your friend is actually pretty normal. I mean, I have friends I care about too, and if someone mocks them, yeah, I'd get mad as well. It just feels weird in this case because it's Jason, the guy with a huge ego who sometimes acts completely out of pocket. Yet he'll still lose his temper if someone insults a close friend. But this next one is weird. At least without any context, there's someone who straight up gets upset at medical professionals. And yeah, if you hear that with no context, it just sounds like a Karen having a meltdown. But let's take a moment to actually understand this person a bit better. Locusta has an extreme, almost instinctive hatred toward medical professionals, so strong that just being around them can send her into a full-on murderous frenzy. This is most clearly shown in the Lilym Harlot story, where her encounter with Florence Nightingale causes her to completely lose control. She floods the battlefield with poison so lethal that enemy mobs drop within just a few turns. Gameplay-wise, this is reflected by Locusta constantly stacking triple poison on enemies. Even Nightingale herself, despite her absurdly inflated HP and near impenetrable noble phantasm resistance, can barely stay alive through sheer endurance alone. When asked why she reacts this way, Locusta claims she hates injections and shots. Setanta immediately calls this out, pointing out that such medical practices didn't even exist during her lifetime. He instead suggests a more reasonable explanation: blood drawing and invasive treatments. Locusta reluctantly accepts this, implying that her hatred isn't random or comedic, but rooted in something much older and much deeper than she wants to admit. Historically, this actually lines up really well with the real Locusta of Gaul. In ancient Rome, medicine and poison were closely connected. Doctors regularly used toxic substances like hellebore, arsenic, and mercury as treatments. A poison and a medicine were often the same thing, just a different dosage. Because of that, court poisoners like Locusta existed in almost the same space as physicians, just without the excuse of healing. To Locusta, medical professionals represented sanctioned suffering, people who prolonged pain instead of ending it. Fate adds even more weight to this by tying Locusta's trauma directly to Nero. Under Agrippina's orders, Locusta was forced to give Nero poisons over time. These weren't meant to kill her, but they slowly destroyed her body, leaving Nero in constant pain and declining health. Locusta was never allowed to heal her, only to keep her alive and suffering. By the time Agrippina was gone, Nero's body was beyond saving, and that became a failure Locusta could never forgive herself for. This leads to Finis Venenum Nero, Locusta's greatest poison and her greatest regret. It was meant to give Nero a painless, merciful death, but Nero refused it and chose to die in agony instead. That moment broke Locusta and shaped her hatred of medicine. And I think this is the real reason why she hates medical experts so much. To her, help often just means forcing someone to keep suffering. Open violence is honest, but medicine, with its promises of salvation, is the most dangerous poison of all. I guess that's it for today. It's not much, but holy shit, it's already past 15 minutes. Share this video somewhere, click subscribe, drop a like, and I'll see you guys next time.